I was told she was dangerous, but the alien vampire woman only wanted love. Elia's ward hated briefings that sounded like ghost stories, but this one had a way of sticking to his ribs. The Alliance Hall was bright, clean, and far too calm for the words on the screen. NOCTYREN, high-risk contact species. Around him, other human staff sat straight-backed, trying not to look nervous. The room smelled faintly of citrus from the air filters. The walls displayed soft, moving patterns meant to relax visitors from a dozen worlds. None of it helped. At the front, Director Halden spoke in a careful voice, as if the wrong tone might summon something. "The Nocturne are an older species," Halden said. "They are not aggressive in the usual way. They do not wage wars. They do not invade. But they are dangerous." Elias watched the next slide appear. A pale figure stood in a dark robe, long fingers folded together. Large eyes reflected the camera light like wet stones. The translator tag read, Sarasthala Diplomatic Envoy. Someone behind Elias let out a small breath, half awe and half fear. Halden continued, "Their biology relies on bioresonance, emotional energy. It is strongest through physical proximity, especially touch. In some cases, prolonged contact can cause faintness, confusion, or emotional instability in other species." Elias raised his hand. "So they're basically empathic parasites?" The room went quiet. Halden's face tightened. "That is an unhelpful term," Halden said. "And it is not what we tell the public. The correct phrase is resonance-dependent." Elias lowered his hand, but he didn't look away from Sarasthala's image. Her face wasn't snarling. She wasn't baring teeth. If anything, she looked like she had been asked to stand still for a photo while thinking about a faraway place. Halden clicked again. The slide showed rules in bold letters. Keep a distance of 2 meters. No touching. Avoid prolonged eye contact. Do not share personal emotional material. Report any unusual mood shift immediately. A few humans swallowed hard. Elias felt his jaw tighten. "These rules will be followed," Halden said. "Our reputation is on the line. This embassy is the first shared station built for multi-species civil exchange. One incident, and the Alliance Council will vote to limit human contact authority." Elias blinked. That part mattered. Humans had earned a strange role in the Alliance. Newcomers, yes, but good at adaptation. Good at mediating. Good at learning others' customs. It was also true that humans were still being watched. Halden turned, and his gaze settled on Elias like a spotlight. "Ward, you have been assigned as liaison to Envoy Sarasthala. You will escort her through her first week. You will keep her schedule. You will ensure all protocols are maintained." A small wave of pity went through the room. Elias could almost feel it like heat. He gave a short nod. "Understood." Halden's tone softened just slightly. "Ward, this is not a punishment. Your evaluations show you remain calm under social pressure. You have a good record with difficult visitors." Elias didn't respond. The truth was, he was not sure how anyone stayed calm when the briefing basically said, "Be polite. Don't get too close. Don't feel too much." When the meeting ended, everyone filed out quickly. Elias stayed behind for a moment, staring at the last slide that still hung in the air. Sarasthala's face hovered above the rules like a quiet question. Dangerous, he thought. But dangerous how? He picked up his tablet and walked toward Dock 3. Dock 3 was a wide corridor with viewing windows that showed a slow sweep of stars. The embassy station rotated gently, creating a comfortable gravity. Soft signs floated in different languages. Elias arrived early, which gave him time to notice how the dock staff acted. They spoke quietly. They checked barriers twice. They placed a subtle line on the floor that marked the 2-meter boundary. When the shuttle finally arrived, it didn't come in like a military craft. It glided with smooth control and no loud bursts. The hull was dark gray, almost like stone. A hatch opened. Cold air spilled out, carrying a faint scent like rain on metal. Then she appeared. Sarasthala stepped into the light with slow precision, as if she had practiced this moment many times. She was taller than Elias expected, almost his height, maybe a little more, but her posture made her seem even taller. Her skin was pale, not sickly, but like moonlight. Her hair was long and dark, tied back with a simple band. Her eyes were large and calm. She wore a robe of deep blue fabric that looked heavy but moved like water. Around her neck hung a thin circle of black crystal. She stopped behind the marked line and folded her hands. She didn't smile. Elias approached, stopping at the 2-meter distance exactly. He kept his hands visible, palms open, the way human diplomats were trained. Envoy Sarasthala, he said. Welcome to the Interstellar Cultural Embassy. I'm Elia's ward, your assigned liaison. Her gaze lifted, then paused near his face, careful, as if her eyes were obeying rules too. Elia's ward, she said. Her voice was soft, and the translator made it even softer, like a low musical note. I accept your guidance. The dock staff looked relieved that she spoke politely. Elia's caught the small shifts in their bodies, the way shoulders relaxed, the way someone stopped gripping a clipboard so hard. Saris glanced at the marked line on the floor, then at Elia's again. This distance is required. Yes, Elia said. It's protocol, she nodded once. I will comply. No complaint, no drama, just obedience. Elias expected a chill of fear to crawl up his spine, but it didn't. What he felt instead was something stranger, the sense that she was holding herself back the way someone holds their breath. Your suite is prepared, he said. I'll walk you there. If you need anything adjusted, lighting, temperature, privacy settings, just tell me. Saris followed at a steady pace, always staying behind the line that the station projected for her movement path. It looked like a polite fence made of light. Elias hated it. They passed a small group of delegates from other species. A tall insect-like envoy paused and angled its body away. A floating gas species dimmed its glow. A reptilian aide made a sign of caution with 2 fingers. Saris didn't react, but Elias saw her hands tighten for a second. First time on a shared station? He asked, trying to sound normal. Yes, she replied. Your kind builds spaces that invite mixing. We try, Elias said. Many would not, Saris said, the hallway lights reflected in her eyes. Elias noticed something then. Her focus kept slipping away from everyone. She wasn't scanning faces like a threat looking for weak spots. She was avoiding eye contact like a person trying not to be rude in a room where everyone already expected her to be rude. They reached her suite. The door recognized her ID and opened silently. Inside, the room had been arranged with neutral colors and a wide window. A small table held a welcome package and an interface panel. Saris stepped in, stopped, and looked around. It is generous, she said, and something in her tone almost broke, like a string pulled too tight. Elias stayed at the doorway, respecting the boundary line. We want you comfortable. Saris looked at him again. Comfort is not my usual condition. Elias didn't know what to say to that. He decided to keep it simple. Would you like me to explain today's schedule? Yes, he brought up his tablet. Orientation in 1 hour, a short tour of public areas, then a meeting with Director Halden. After that, a quiet period for rest. Tomorrow, you'll attend the Open Cultural Forum. Saris listened without interruption. When he finished, she said, You do not fear being assigned to me. It wasn't a question, but Elias heard the careful hope hiding inside it. He chose his words slowly. I respect the protocol. But I don't think fear helps diplomacy. Saris's fingers loosened. She looked down at the black crystal around her neck. This is a restraint, she said, touching it lightly. It reduces my resonance field. Elias frowned. You wear that all the time? Yes, Saris said. It is required when I am among others. It sounded like someone saying, I wear gloves so I don't hurt you. But there was also a second meaning. I wear gloves so I don't touch anyone at all. Elias cleared his throat. If it causes discomfort, we can speak with medical support. Saris's gaze lifted. Discomfort is preferable to accidents. Has there been an accident? Elias asked before he could stop himself. For the first time, Saris hesitated. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. In the past, she said carefully, others believed my kind took by force. They believed we wanted to harm them. And, Elias asked, Saris's voice became even quieter. We wanted to be close. Elias felt his chest tighten, not with fear, but with an ache he didn't expect. He looked at her, really looked. She stood tall and controlled, but the edges of her control felt like walls built from years of being told she was a monster. He tried to keep his tone professional. The Alliance has concerns. We have safety standards. I understand, Saris said. I am used to being understood as a threat. Elias didn't like the way she said it. It wasn't angry. It was resigned. He glanced down at the boundary line projected on the floor. 2 meters, no touching, don't share emotional material, as if emotions were weapons. Envoy, he said, I'll be outside your door if you need anything. Saris nodded. Then, as he turned to leave, she spoke again. Elia's ward. He paused at the doorway. Yes. Saris looked at him with careful intensity, like she was stepping near a cliff but not over it. Do humans, she asked, fear affection? The question landed in the air between them, quiet but powerful. Elias felt his mouth go dry. He thought about the warnings, the rules, the way everyone flinched when she walked past. He thought about how she had said we wanted to be close. He answered honestly in the simplest English he could manage. Sometimes, he said, but we also need it. Saris's eyes softened just a little. Then your kind is brave. Elias didn't know what to say to that either. He stepped back into the hallway, the door sliding shut between them. As he walked away, he realized something that made his stomach twist. The embassy had prepared for a predator, but what if Saris Thala was not hunting anyone? What if she was starving for something no one would give her? Elias stared at the rules on his tablet one more time, then closed the screen. 2 meters, he thought, no touching, no feelings. And yet in the quiet behind that door, an alien, vampire, woman had asked him one of the most human questions in the universe. He kept walking, but the question followed him like a shadow. Do humans fear affection? And for the first time since the briefing, Elias wondered if the real danger was Saris Thala at all. Maybe the real danger was what would happen if someone finally answered her with kindness. The station lights were still dim, set to the soft blue of artificial dawn. For a moment he lay still, staring at the ceiling of his small quarters. Saris Thala's question echoed in his mind, as clear as if she were standing in the room with him. Do humans fear affection? He exhaled slowly and sat up. Get a grip, he muttered to himself. This was his job: diplomacy, schedules, rules. He had dealt with nervous envoys, proud traders, and species that communicated only in color pulses. One quiet question from a Nocturne diplomat should not be enough to throw him off balance, and yet it had. After a quick breakfast, Elias checked his tablet. No alerts, no medical warnings, no incident reports from Saris, sweet overnight. That in itself was considered a success. He made his way through the station corridors toward her quarters. As he walked, he noticed the subtle changes in behavior around him. Word traveled fast on a station like this. A pair of human technicians whispered as he passed. That's her liaison, one said under their breath. Is she really, you know? The other asked. Elias didn't slow down. He pretended not to hear, but his shoulders tightened. Outside Saris' suite, he paused and straightened his uniform. The boundary line on the floor flickered to life as he approached, drawing its invisible wall. 2 meters, always 2 meters. He pressed the door chime. A moment passed. Then the door slid open. Saris stood inside, already dressed in her blue robe. The black crystal rested at her throat, unmoving. Her posture was perfect, as if she had been standing there for some time. Good morning, envoy, Elias said. I hope you rested well. Yes, Saris replied. The silence here is kind. Elias smiled faintly. That's one word for it. He glanced at his tablet. Today is light. We'll begin with orientation in Hall 7. After that, a guided walk through the public areas. No formal meetings until later. Saris nodded. I am prepared. They began walking, Saris keeping to her projected path, the glowing boundary adjusting with every step. Elias walked alongside, careful not to cross the line. At first, neither of them spoke. The station was busier now. Delegates from many worlds moved through the wide corridors. Some glanced at Saris and quickly looked away. Others slowed, curiosity fighting with fear. Elias noticed how Saris reacted to none of it. Her face remained calm, composed. But he began to see the signs beneath the surface, the way her steps slowed when others recoiled, the way her shoulders stiffened when whispers followed them. In Hall 7, a small group waited, humans mostly. A few representatives from less sensitive species. The room was designed for comfort, soft lighting, curved seating, warm colors. As Saris entered, conversation stopped. Not abruptly, not loudly, just enough that the silence felt heavy. Elias cleared his throat. Everyone, this is Envoy Saris Thala of the Nocturne. She'll be observing today. A few people nodded politely. One woman gave a nervous smile. No one stepped closer. Saris inclined her head. Thank you for allowing my presence. Her voice was steady, but Elias caught the slight pause before presence, as if the word itself carried weight. The orientation began. A human coordinator spoke about station layout, emergency procedures, cultural zones. Elias watched Saris from the corner of his eye. She listened intently, too intently, like someone who expected every word to hide a threat. When the coordinator mentioned emotional safety protocols, Saris's gaze flickered toward the floor. After the session ended, the group dispersed quickly. No one lingered. No one approached her with questions. Elias felt a familiar frustration rise in his chest. Ready for the walk? He asked. Yes, Sarah said. They moved through the public areas at a slow pace. The station had been designed to encourage interaction, open spaces, shared gardens, viewing windows that showed the stars. And yet, wherever Saris went, the space around her emptied. At a refreshment area, a group of delegates quietly moved away as she approached. At a viewing window, two visitors left without a word. Saris stopped walking. Elias halted too, careful not to cross the boundary. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Saris looked at the empty space ahead of them. "Am I causing disruption?" Elias hesitated. He considered lying. A small lie meant to protect her, but he remembered her question from the night before. "Some people are cautious," he said instead. She nodded slowly. "They always are." They continued walking. After a few moments, Saris spoke again. "Your kind does not avoid me." Elias shrugged. "We're good at getting used to things." "That is not what I observe," Saris said. She glanced at him briefly, then away. "You are aware of my nature, you have seen the warnings, and yet you do not withdraw." "I follow protocol," Elias said. "That is not the same," Saris replied. He couldn't argue with that. They reached a quiet corridor that overlooked a cluster of distant stars. The foot traffic here was light. Elias checked the schedule. They had time. "Would you like to stop here for a moment?" he asked. "Yes," Saris said. They stood side by side, separated by the glowing line on the floor. The stars drifted slowly beyond the glass. Saris folded her hands. "On my world," she said, "we do not build places like this." "Why not?" Elias asked. "Because proximity leads to longing," Saris replied. "And longing leads to hunger." Elias frowned. "Hunger," she hesitated, then nodded. "You have been briefed on resonance." "Basic level," Elias said. "Emotional energy, stronger with trust, stronger with closeness." "Yes," Sarah said. "For my people it is not a choice. We feel it whether we wish to or not." Elias waited, letting the silence invite more. "When other species fear us," Saris continued, "their emotions are sharp, painful. Fear sustains us, but it also harms us." "That doesn't sound like feeding," Elias said quietly. "It is survival," Saris replied. "And it is lonely." The word hung between them, lonely. Elias felt a knot form in his chest. He thought of the black crystal at her throat. "Is that why you volunteered for this assignment?" he asked. Saris looked down at the crystal. Her fingers brushed it, light and careful. "Yes," she said. "I wished to learn if there were other ways." "Other ways to survive?" Elias asked. "Other ways to live," Saris corrected. They stood in silence again. A human couple walked past at the far end of the corridor, laughing softly. The sound echoed faintly. Saris watched them with open curiosity. "They are bonded," she said. Elias smiled. "Yes, they're probably partners." "They share emotional space freely," Sarah said, "without restraint." "Most of the time," Elias said. Saris tilted her head. "Is it not dangerous?" "It can be," Elias admitted, "but we decide it's worth the risk." Saris was quiet for a long moment. "Among my people," she said slowly, "affection is regulated, controlled. We are taught from youth that closeness brings harm." "And do you believe that?" Elias asked. Saris's eyes lifted to the stars. "I believe it has kept us alive." "That's not the same as believing it's true," Elias said. She looked at him then, really looked at him. Her gaze was steady but careful, as if she were measuring something fragile. "You are unusual," she said. Elias chuckled. "I get that a lot." "No," Sarah said. "I mean you are comfortable with contradiction." He considered that. "Humans are full of it." A faint pause followed. Then, to Elias' surprise, Saris's lips curved just slightly. It wasn't a full smile, but it was close. The moment passed when a voice echoed down the corridor. "Envoy Saristhala?" Director Halden approached, flanked by two aides. His expression was polite, but his eyes flicked to the boundary line, checking distance. "Director," Elias said. Halden nodded. "I trust the orientation is proceeding without incident." "Yes," Elias said. "Everything is within protocol." Halden turned to Saris. "Envoy, we hope the station meets your needs." "It is enlightening," Saris replied. Halden smiled thinly. "Excellent. Please remember that all interactions must remain within established guidelines." Saris inclined her head. "I am aware." Halden looked at Elias. "Ward, a word." Elias followed him a few steps away. "You're doing well," Halden said quietly, "but remember why those rules exist." "I do," Elias replied. "Good," Halden said, "because fear spreads faster than facts. One wrong impression and the council will shut this down." Elias nodded. "Understood." Halden and his aides left. Elias returned to Saris's side. "Apologies," he said. It is expected, Saris replied. They resumed walking. As they neared her suite, Saris slowed. Elia's ward, she said. Yes, thank you, she said, for not treating me as a thing to be managed. Elias met her gaze, careful not to hold it too long. You're a person, he said simply, or close enough. That earned him another almost smile. At her door, Saris stopped. I will see you later, she said. Yes, Elias replied. I'll return before the forum. As the door slid shut, Elias stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space where she had been. Around the corner, the station continued its quiet hum. Life went on, rules were followed. Boundaries held, but Elias could no longer shake the feeling that the real danger was not Sarasthala's presence. It was the distance everyone insisted on keeping. And for the first time, he wondered what might happen if that distance ever disappeared. Not because anything bad had happened. No alarms, no incidents, no reports of emotional instability. Everything was, on paper, perfect. That was the problem. Elias noticed it in the small things. Conversations stopped when Sarasthala entered a room. Paths subtly changed to avoid crossing hers. People smiled too quickly, nodded too fast, and moved on. Fear without action. He escorted Saris to the medical wing that morning for a routine check. It was standard procedure for all new envoys, but the staff treated it like a dangerous experiment. A human doctor stood behind a transparent panel, speaking through an intercom. Envoy Sarasthala, the doctor said, will be monitoring bioresonance levels only. No physical contact will occur. Saris stood still on the marked platform. I understand. Elias leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching numbers scroll across the screens. He didn't understand most of them, but he recognized the warning colors. Yellow, not red. The doctor frowned. Your resonance levels are unusually low. Saris's head tilted slightly. That is expected. Expected? Elias asked. Yes, Saris said calmly. I am restricting intake. The doctor glanced at Elias, then back to Saris. For how long? Since my arrival, Saris replied. Elias straightened. You haven't been feeding at all. The word felt wrong the moment he said it. Saris did not react with offense. Minimal intake only, ambient emotional output, background levels. The doctor tapped the screen. That's not sustainable long-term. Saris folded her hands. It is survivable. Elias felt something cold settle in his chest. Doctor, he said, can you give us a moment? The doctor hesitated, then nodded. I'll step out. Call if you need anything. When the room was quiet, Elias looked at Saris. Why didn't you tell anyone? Because it would cause concern, she replied. Concern often leads to restriction. You're already restricted, Elias said. Yes, Saris agreed, but it can become worse. Elias ran a hand through his hair. You're hurting yourself to make others comfortable. Saris looked at him steadily. I am preventing harm. By harming yourself, Elias said. She paused. It is a familiar trade. That sentence hit harder than any warning briefing. Elias lowered his voice. Is this how it always is for your people? Saris considered the question. Among my kind, we share regulated bonds, scheduled, controlled. Outside our species, fear is the primary source. Fear, Elias repeated. Yes, Saris said. Fear is strong, sharp, easy to access. And painful, Elias said. For both sides, Saris replied. Elias thought of the way others flinched around her. The way whispers followed her steps. They think you're dangerous, he said. Saris nodded. I have been called worse. That's not what I mean, Elias said. They think you take. Saris looked down at her hands. We do not wish to take, we wish to be given. The silence that followed felt heavy but not uncomfortable. Elias spoke carefully. What happens if you don't get enough? Saris's fingers tightened. Weakness, emotional dulling, eventually dissolution. Elias frowned. Dissolution? Our sense of self fades, Saris said. We become less present. It is not death, but it is not life. Elias felt anger rise, sharp and unexpected, not at Saris, at the system, at the rules written by people who had never bothered to understand. Has anyone ever tried another way? He asked. Saris looked up, surprised. Another way? Yes, Elias said. Something other than fear or strict control. Saris hesitated. There have been theories. Theories, Elias pressed. That positive emotional resonance could be shared safely, Saris said. But no species volunteered. Trust is required, and trust is rare. Elias let out a slow breath. Humans trusted too easily, the Alliance often said. Too emotionally open, too expressive, too unpredictable. Maybe that wasn't a weakness. Saris, he said slowly, humans experience emotions differently. I am aware, she replied. Your emotional range is broad, and we can regulate it, Elia said. With training, meditation, focus. Saris's eyes widened slightly. You can choose the intensity. To a degree, Elia said. Not perfectly, but enough. Saris was very still. That is unheard of. Elias swallowed. What if there was a way for you to experience positive resonance without harm, without fear? The words felt dangerous even as he spoke them. Saris did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was almost a whisper. That would require consent, she said, and understanding and a willingness to risk connection. Elias nodded. Humans do that all the time. Saris studied him. And you? Elias didn't answer right away. He thought about the rules, the warnings, Director Halden's careful voice. He thought about Saris standing alone in rooms designed for togetherness. I believe, Elias said, that no one should fade away just because others are afraid of them. Saris looked at him, truly looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. Not hunger, not need, hope. The doctor returned a moment later, clearing his throat. Everything all right? Yes, Elias said. We're done. They left the medical wing together. Word traveled fast. By the afternoon, Elias noticed increased monitoring, more cameras, more subtle security presence. No one said anything outright, but the air felt tighter. Before the open cultural forum, Elias was called into Director Halden's office. Halden stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. I've read the medical report, Halden said without turning around. The envoy is undernourished. She's limiting herself, Elias replied. Out of consideration, Halden turned. That's not sustainable. No, Elias said, it's not, Halden sighed. Ward, you're getting close to her. I'm doing my job, Elias said. Your job is to maintain safety, Halden said, for everyone. And that includes her, Elias said. Halden studied him. You're suggesting change. I'm suggesting understanding, Elias replied. Halden was quiet for a long moment. Be careful, empathy can blur judgment. Or clarify it, Elias said. Halden dismissed him with a wave. We'll revisit this. The cultural forum that evening was well attended. Representatives sat in a wide circle, each with translation aids. Sarah sat at her designated position, slightly apart. The topic was interspecies coexistence. Speakers talked about trade, borders, shared technology. No one spoke about loneliness, until Saris raised her hand. The room stilled. With permission, she said. The moderator hesitated, then nodded. You may speak. Saris stood slowly. My species is often described as dangerous, as predators, as beings who take without consent. A murmur rippled through the room. We have accepted this description, Saris continued, because it allowed others to feel safe. She paused. But it is incomplete. Elias held his breath. We do not hunger for fear, Saris said. We endure it. What we seek is connection. What sustains us is trust. The room was silent. We have been taught that love is dangerous, Saris said. That closeness leads to harm, but I have observed humans. You build your lives around connection despite the risk. She looked around the room. Perhaps the danger is not in feeling too much. Perhaps it is in feeling nothing at all. The moderator cleared his throat. Thank you, envoy. The forum moved on, but nothing felt the same afterward. As Elias walked Saris back to her suite, the station felt different, quieter, thoughtful. You took a risk, Elias said. Yes, Saris replied, but silence is also a risk. At her door, she stopped. Elias Ward, she said. Yes, thank you, she said, for seeing me. Elias nodded. You're not a monster. Saris's lips curved into a small, real smile. No, she said softly. I am simply hungry for something better. As the door closed, Elias leaned against the wall, heart pounding. The Alliance feared Nocturne hunger, but now Elias understood the truth. They weren't feeding on blood. They weren't feeding on violence. They were feeding on fear because fear was all anyone ever gave them. And humanity, with all its messy emotions and risky compassion, might be the first species willing to offer something else. Something far more powerful. No official statements were released. No public objections were raised. The station continued its routines as if nothing had changed. But Elias felt the shift immediately. The air was tighter. The smiles were thinner. Observation drones hovered longer in corridors. Medical staff reviewed reports more often. Elias' tablet pinged with requests for updates he had already submitted. They were watching. Saris noticed it too. You are under review, she said quietly as they walked toward a small conference room. So are you, Elias replied. Yes, she said, but that is normal for me. That sentence made him wince. The conference room was small and sealed. Transparent walls allowed visibility from the outside, a clear sign this was not meant to be private. Inside waited 3 people, Director Halden, a medical specialist, and a human behavioral scientist named Dr. Lena Morris. "Please sit," Halden said. Saris remained standing behind her boundary marker. Elias took the seat nearest to her, careful to stay within protocol. Halden folded his hands. "Envoy Sarasthala, your comments at the forum have raised concerns." Saris inclined her head. "That was not my intent." "Intent aside," Halden continued, "your condition is deteriorating. The medical team confirms continued restriction will lead to cognitive dulling." "Yes," Sarah said, "that is correct." Dr. Morris leaned forward. "Envoy, why are you choosing this?" Saris met her gaze briefly. "Because fear is harmful to others and to myself." Morris nodded slowly. "And you believe there is another option?" "Yes," Sarah said. Halden looked at Elias. "You encouraged this." "I listened," Elias replied. "There's a difference." Morris tapped her tablet. "Director, humans are uniquely suited to this situation." Halden frowned. "Explain." "Humans can consciously regulate emotional output," Morris said. "Through training, meditation, focus. We do it every day, teachers, therapists, emergency responders." Halden crossed his arms. "And you're suggesting we use that emotionally?" "Yes," Morris said. "Controlled, consensual emotional sharing, no physical contact." Saris's hands tightened. "That would still be dangerous," Halden said. "For whom?" Elias asked. "For the human," Halden replied. "We don't know the long-term effects." Morris met his gaze. "That's why we'd start small, carefully." Halden was silent. Elias took a breath. "Director, Saris is starving, not violently, not dramatically, quietly, and everyone is pretending that's acceptable." Halden looked away. Saris spoke then, her voice calm but firm. "If this request is denied, I will comply. I will continue as before." Elias turned to her sharply. "You shouldn't have to." She looked at him. "I am accustomed to shouldering the burden." Halden sighed heavily. "If we allow this and something goes wrong." "It will be my responsibility," Elias said. The room went very still. Morris stared at him. "Elias, I volunteer," he said, "as the test subject." Saris's head snapped toward him. "No," Elias looked at her. "Yes." "This is not your duty," Saris said. "It's my choice," Elias replied. Halden studied him for a long moment. "You understand the risk?" "Yes," Elias said, "and I understand the alternative." Halden closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he looked tired. "1 session," he said. "Monitored, no physical contact. Immediate termination at the first sign of instability." Saris's voice was tight. "Director, this is not for you alone," Halden said. "This is to answer a question the Alliance has avoided." He stood. "Prepare the chamber." The resonance chamber was not large, soft lighting. Neutral colors, no sharp edges. Sensors lined the walls. A clear line on the floor separated the 2 sides. Elias sat on one side, legs crossed, hands resting on his knees. He wore a simple monitoring band around his wrist. Saris stood opposite him. The black crystal still hung at her throat. "You don't have to do this," she said again. Elias smiled gently. "Neither do you." Medical staff observed from behind glass. Dr. Morris's voice came through a speaker. "We'll begin when you're ready." Elias focus on steady emotional output, calm, openness, no escalation. "Understood," Elias said. Saris looked uncertain. "I have never done this without harm." "You won't," Elias said. "We'll go slow." She hesitated, then nodded. Dr. Morris spoke again. "Envoy, you may lower your restraint slightly, only 10%. Saris's fingers trembled as she touched the crystal. It dimmed just a fraction. The air changed, not dramatically, just warmer. Elias closed his eyes and breathed slowly. He focused on a simple memory. Sitting with his sister on a quiet evening, no words, just presence. He felt something brush against his awareness, not hunger, attention. Saris gasped softly. "Report," Morris said. Saris's voice shook. "It is gentle." Elias opened his eyes. Saris's posture had changed. Her shoulders were no longer rigid. Her hands were no longer clenched. Her eyes were bright. "Elias," she said quietly, "this feels safe," he smiled. "Good." The sensors showed a steady flow, no spikes, no danger. Minutes passed. Saris took a slow step forward, stopping at the boundary. "I can feel intention," she said. "Choice, there is no fear here." Elias nodded. "You're not feeding on fear." Saris's voice broke. "I have never experienced this." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling over. The medical team stiffened. Emotional surge detected, Morris said. It's not harmful, Sarah said quickly. It's relief. Elias felt it too, a strange warmth like being seen without judgment. Saris, he said gently, you're not alone here. She covered her mouth, a gesture she must have learned from observing humans. I was told, she whispered, that love would destroy us. The sensors remained stable. After 10 minutes, Morris ended the session. That's enough for today. The crystal brightened again as Saris restored the restraint. The warmth faded, but the change remained. Saris looked alive. Elias stood a little unsteady but smiling. You okay? Morris asked. Yes, Elias said. I feel tired but good. Saris looked at him with something close to awe. You offered me kindness, she said. Without fear. Elias shrugged. Humans do that sometimes. Outside the chamber, news spread fast, too fast. By evening, messages flooded the Alliance network. Concern, curiosity, fear. Some called it reckless, others called it revolutionary. Director Halden summoned Elias again. You've started something, Halden said. I hope so, Elias replied. Saris was escorted back to her suite, but this time the whispers were different, not fear, questions. At her door, Saris turned to Elias. You took a great risk, she said. So did you, he replied. No, Saris said softly. For me, risk is familiar, hope is not. She placed a hand over her heart. Today I felt full for the first time. Elias swallowed. That's good. Saris met his eyes, careful but steady. If humans can do this, the galaxy will change. Elias nodded. That scares a lot of people. It should, Saris said gently. Fear loses its power when understanding takes its place. As the door closed, Elias leaned against the wall, exhausted. He had crossed a line no rulebook had prepared him for. But he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his bones, the most dangerous thing humanity had ever offered the galaxy was not its weapons. It was its willingness to care. Lights stayed on longer than usual. Messages crossed the Alliance network in quiet bursts. Committees formed, dissolved, and reformed again. No one raised their voice, but everyone was afraid of what had already begun. Elias felt it when he woke. His head was clear, but his body felt heavy, like he had run a long distance. The medical team said it was normal, emotional exertion without physical strain. They recommended rest. He ignored that advice. By the time he reached Sarasthala's suite, 2 security officers stood nearby. They did not block his path, but their presence was obvious. The door slid open. Saris stood inside, hands folded. The black crystal rested against her chest, glowing softly. You are being watched, she said. So are you, Elias replied. She nodded. The tone has changed. Yes, Elias said. You scared them. Saris tilted her head. I did not intend to. You showed them something they don't understand, Elias said. That's worse. They walked slowly toward a quiet lounge reserved for diplomatic reflection. It was empty, but sensors lined the walls. Saris stopped near the window. I feel stronger, she said. Not physically, internally. Elias smiled. That's what happens when someone isn't starving anymore. Saris looked at him. You speak of it plainly. I think it's time someone did, Elias replied. Later that morning, Director Halden called an emergency council session. The room was larger than Hall 7, filled with representatives from dozens of species. Some appeared via hologram, others sat behind personal shields or environmental fields. Saris stood at her designated position, alone. Elias stood beside her. That by itself caused a stir. Halden raised his hand for silence. We are here, he said, to discuss the implications of yesterday's experiment. Murmurs spread through the room. A tall avian representative spoke first. The human endangered himself. He volunteered, Elias said. That is irrelevant, the avian replied. Your kind's recklessness is well documented. Elias bit back a reply. A gelatinous delegate pulsed softly. The Nocturne have always been classified as high risk. This confirms it. Saris stepped forward slightly. With respect, it disproves it. The room quieted. My people do not seek to harm, Saris said. We have adapted to fear because it was all that was permitted. A reptilian elder hissed softly. Your hunger destabilizes others. Yes, Saris said. Fear does that. The words landed harder than any accusation. Elias took a breath. Director, if I may. Halden nodded. What happened yesterday was not feeding, Elias said. It was sharing, controlled, consensual, safe. A mechanical voice cut in. Safe for now, Elias nodded. Which is why we're proposing structure. Halden raised an eyebrow. Structure? Yes, Elias said. A program. The room erupted in murmurs. Saris turned to him sharply. Elias, he met her gaze. We talked about other ways, he faced the council. Humans propose a cultural exchange initiative. Voluntary, supervised, emotional bonding sessions between trained humans and Nocturne. Several delegates recoiled. This is madness, someone said. This is dependence, another argued. Elias shook his head. It's cooperation. A scaled delegate leaned forward. And when the humans withdraw, when your kind tires of being sustenance? Saris's voice cut through the noise. We do not consume people. The room stilled. We are sustained by mutual presence, Saris said. If humans withdrew, we would adapt. As we always have, her hands tightened. But we would remember what it was like to be treated as people. That silenced the room more effectively than any threat. Dr. Morris stood. The data supports this. Emotional output remained stable, no adverse effects. In fact, both participants showed improved cognitive markers. A synthetic delegate flickered. Improved how? Empathy, Morris said. Focus, emotional resilience. Elias added, humans weren't drained. If anything, I felt clearer. That caused another wave of murmurs. Halden leaned back, rubbing his temples. You're asking the Alliance to rewrite decades of safety policy. Yes, Elias said, because the old policy was based on fear, not understanding. A voice from the far end spoke quietly. And what if this creates emotional reliance? Elias turned. Then we manage it like any relationship. The delegate's eyes narrowed. You speak lightly of bonds that have ended civilizations. Saris bowed her head. Isolation has ended more. Silence followed. Halden stood. This council will recess. We will deliberate. As the session ended, security presence increased around Saris. Not aggressive, just close. Elias walked her back toward her suite. They're afraid, Saris said. Yes, Elias replied, but some are listening. She looked at him. You placed yourself in danger politically. He shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time. They reached her door. Elias Ward, Saris said. Yes. If this fails, she said, my people will suffer consequences. And if it succeeds, Elias replied, they won't. Saris studied him. You believe this is worth the risk? Yes, Elias said, because the alternative is slow erasure. She nodded slowly. Then I will stand with you. The next few days were tense. The council requested reports, more tests, more data. Humans volunteered quietly, more than expected. Teachers, therapists, medics. People trained to hold space for others. The Alliance noticed. One delegate remarked, your species seems eager to be used. Elias answered calmly, we call it helping. Saris watched the process with something like disbelief. You would do this, she said one evening, for strangers. Elias smiled. We do worse for people we love. That night, Saris recorded a message to her homeworld. For generations, she said, we believed ourselves cursed, dangerous, unworthy of closeness. She lifted her gaze. I have learned that we were simply alone. The message spread quickly among the Nocturne. Responses flooded in. Hopeful, fearful, curious, not all welcomed it. Some accused Saris of betrayal, of weakness, of risking their survival. Saris listened to them all. Then she met Elias in the quiet lounge again. I may be recalled, she said. Elias' chest tightened. What? My people fear dependence, she said. They fear change. So does everyone, Elias said. Saris clasped her hands. If I am recalled, the program may die. Elias thought for a moment. Then we make it bigger, he said. Saris blinked. Bigger? We take this to the public, Elias said. Open sessions, transparency, let the galaxy see what this really is. That would be very dangerous, Saris said. Elias smiled. I know. Saris studied him, then nodded. Yes, she said. Let them see. As the station lights dimmed to night cycle, Elias looked out at the stars. He had expected fear, backlash, rejection. He had not expected this. That kindness, once offered, would be the most difficult thing to stop. The Alliance feared the Nocturne, but now they feared something else more. A future where monsters became neighbors, and where humans once again refused to look away. That alone made the Alliance nervous. The announcement spread through the station like a quiet storm. Notices appeared on public screens in dozens of languages. Voluntary human, NOCTYREN emotional exchange. But people came. The chamber chosen was larger than before, with wide space and soft light. Observation decks ringed the upper level. Medical teams stood ready, calm but alert. Saristhala arrived early. She stood near the center of the room, her posture straight, the black crystal glowing faintly at her throat. Elias walked beside her, feeling the weight of attention settle on them. You do not have to stay, Saris said quietly. Elias shook his head. I'm not going anywhere. Across the room, a small group of humans waited. Volunteers, not soldiers, not thrill-seekers, a middle-aged therapist, a young nurse, an older man who had lost his partner years ago and still carried that love with him. Saris looked at them with wide eyes. They know what this is? She asked. Yes, Elias said, as much as anyone can. And they still came, Saris said softly. Yes, Elias replied again. The session moderator stepped forward. We will begin with one participant. The therapist stepped into the marked space opposite Saris. Saris hesitated. Her fingers brushed the crystal. Elias leaned close, keeping distance. Slow, just like before, she nodded. The restraint dimmed slightly. The room seemed to warm, not physically, emotionally. The therapist closed her eyes and breathed steadily. Calm, openness, care without expectation. Saris inhaled sharply. The sensors lit up but stayed stable. I feel, Saris whispered, kindness. The therapist smiled gently. Tears slipped from her eyes, unashamed. This is safe, the moderator said quietly. Minutes passed. No alarms, no panic. When the session ended, Saris restored the restraint and stepped back, her hands trembling. She looked different. Her skin held more color. Her eyes were brighter. She bowed deeply. Thank you. The therapist bowed back. The room was silent. Then someone in the observation deck began to clap. Slowly, carefully, others joined, not loud, not cheering, just acknowledgement. The next session followed, then another. Over the next days, the station changed. Nocturne delegates moved with less stiffness. Their voices grew stronger, their posture relaxed. Humans changed too. They spoke of feeling more centered, more aware, more present. One volunteer said, it's like sitting with someone who truly listens. The Alliance noticed. Reports came in from medical teams. Impro VED emotional stability, NOCTYREN. This is sharing. Elias watched her speak with growing confidence. She no longer shrank when eyes turned toward her. One evening, Elias and Saris walked through the public garden. Real plants grew there under artificial sunlight. The space had once been empty whenever Saris passed. Now people only paused, some nodded, some smiled. A small alien child pointed at Saris and whispered something to its parent. The parent hesitated, then nodded. The child waved. Saris froze. Elias noticed immediately. It's okay, he said softly. Slowly, carefully, Saris raised her hand and waved back. The child laughed. Saris lowered her hand, eyes shining. That, she said, voice shaking, has never happened before. Elias smiled. Welcome to being seen. Later, in a quiet lounge, Saris spoke more openly than she ever had. My people believed love was dangerous because it overwhelmed us, she said, but we were never taught how to share it safely. Elias nodded. We mess it up all the time, but we keep trying. Saris looked at him. Why? Elias thought for a moment. Because being alone hurts more. The Alliance Council reconvened. This time the room felt different, less tense, more curious. Halden spoke first. The data is clear. This program is not a threat. A metallic delegate asked, Then what is it? Halden looked at Saris, then at Elias. A bridge, he said. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some species requested observer status. Others requested trial programs. Even a few who had once voted for Nocturne isolation changed their stance. Fear was still there, but it was no longer alone. That night, Saris stood at her window, looking out at the stars. Elias stood beside her, keeping respectful distance. My homeworld has responded, she said. Elias' heart tightened. And they are divided, Saris said. Some fear what we are becoming, others hope. That's normal, Elias said. Saris turned to him. They asked about you. Oh, Elias said. That sounds ominous. She smiled fully this time. They want to understand humans. Elias laughed softly. Good luck to them. Saris's expression grew serious. Elias, what we share here is not feeding. No, he agreed. It is not duty, she said. No, it is not strategy, she continued. Elias met her gaze. No, it is, she searched for the word. Connection, Elias said gently. Saris nodded. Yes, she hesitated, then asked, Does your kind have a word for this kind of bond? Elias considered. We have many words, care, trust, love. Saris repeated the last word softly. Love. Yes, Elias said, but not the dramatic kind, not the consuming kind. What kind then? Saris asked. The choosing kind, Elias replied, the kind you give freely. Saris was quiet for a long time. Then she said, that may be the most dangerous thing of all. Elias smiled. You're not wrong. In the days that followed, the program expanded, carefully, thoughtfully. Nocturne lifespans began to lengthen. Their emotional range widened, their culture shifted. They were no longer defined by hunger. Humans gained something too, a reminder that empathy was not weakness, that gentleness could reshape civilizations. On the final day of the cycle, Director Halden stood beside Elias and Saris in the main hall. "The Alliance will formally recognize the Nocturne as an empathic species, not a predatory one," he announced. Applause filled the hall. Saris closed her eyes. Elias felt a tightness in his chest. As the crowd dispersed, Saris turned to him. "I was told I was dangerous," she said quietly. Elias shook his head. "You were misunderstood," she smiled. "And I was told love would destroy us." Elias met her gaze. "Looks like it's doing the opposite." Saris placed a hand over her heart, then mirrored the human gesture she had learned. "Thank you," she said, "for choosing us." Elias answered honestly. "Thank you for trusting us." Above them, stars drifted in silence. The galaxy had not changed because of power. It had changed because two species had dared to believe that connection did not have to hurt. And somewhere among the stars, a people once feared as monsters were learning, slowly, carefully, what love looked like. The galaxy did not change all at once. It never did. Change came quietly, in meeting rooms and shared halls, in small choices repeated many times. It came in reports written with less fear in their language. It came in how people stood a little closer without realizing it. For the Nocturne, change came like waking from a long night. Saristhala stood before the Alliance assembly one final time. Not alone this time. Behind her stood other Nocturne envoys, new arrivals, their posture still careful, their restraint crystals glowing softly. They had watched the broadcasts, they had read the data, they had felt the shift. Elias stood off to the side, not as a speaker, but as a witness. Director Halden addressed the chamber. "After extensive observation," he said, "the Alliance formally lifts the high-risk contact designation from the Nocturne species." The room was quiet for a heartbeat. Then came sound, applause, soft at first, then steady. Saris closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was no fear there. "The Nocturne are hereby recognized," Halden continued, "as an empathic resonance species, requiring consent-based emotional interaction. Cultural exchange programs will be established under Alliance Charter." A pause. "Humanity will act as primary advisors." That caused another ripple, surprise, curiosity, even some disbelief. Elias let out a slow breath. Saris stepped forward. "For a long time," she said, her voice steady and clear, "my people believed ourselves cursed. We believed we were dangerous by nature." She looked around the chamber. "We now understand that we were not dangerous, we were deprived." No one interrupted. "We survived on fear because fear was all that was permitted to us," Saris continued. "But fear is not nourishment. It is erosion." She placed a hand over her chest. "Humans taught us that connection does not have to consume, that care can be shared, that love, freely given, strengthens both sides." She bowed deeply. "We thank you." The assembly ended without protest. That alone felt unreal. In the weeks that followed, the station changed in ways Elias had not expected. The boundary lines faded, not all at once, not officially, but people stopped watching them so closely. The projected distances were still there, but they felt less like walls and more like guidelines. Saris walked the halls without whispers following her. Nocturne envoys gathered in public spaces, learning how to exist without shrinking. Humans greeted them not with fear, but with curiosity. Children asked questions. What do they eat? Humans learned that stillness could hold emotion just as deeply as words. Elias continued his role as liaison, but it felt different now, less like guarding an edge, more like walking a bridge. One evening, Elias and Saris sat in the garden again. The same place where people had once fled from her presence. Now the benches were occupied. A group of humans talked softly nearby. A pair of aliens shared a quiet meal. Life moved naturally around them. Saris watched it all with wonder. "I no longer feel hollow," she said. Elias smiled. "That's good." She turned to him. "My people call this state Sarin." "What does it mean?" Elias asked. "Being sustained without taking," Saris replied. "It was once thought impossible." Elias leaned back. "Humans would call that healthy." Saris smiled at the word. "Healthy," she repeated. A message arrived from the Nocturne homeworld. Saris read it slowly. "They have voted," she said. Elias sat up straighter. "And they will restructure our society," Saris said. "No more enforced isolation, no more fear-based survival." She looked at him, eyes bright. They want to learn from humans. Elias laughed softly. That's risky. Yes, Saris agreed, but risk is no longer terrifying. A pause settled between them. Saris spoke again carefully. Elias, when I first arrived, I believed affection was lethal. He nodded. You told me. I was wrong, she said. What was lethal was believing we did not deserve it. Elias felt a familiar warmth in his chest. You always deserved it, he said simply. She looked at him for a long moment. Does your kind understand, she asked, how powerful that belief is? Not always, Elias admitted. We forget sometimes. Saris inclined her head. Then perhaps we can remind you. The first Interstellar Empathic Conference was held 6 months later. It was not dramatic. No speeches about destiny. No declarations of unity. Just shared spaces, shared silence, and shared understanding. Species once considered cold learned to listen. Species once ruled by fear learned to pause. Humans were not leaders. They were facilitators. That suited them fine. During the closing session, a delegate asked a simple question. What if this fails in the future? Elias answered before anyone else could. Then we adjust, he said. Like we always do. Sarah stood beside him. Love is not a solution, she added. It is a practice. The delegate nodded, thoughtful. On the day Saris prepared to leave the station, Elias walked her to the dock. The same dock where she had first arrived. There were no marked lines now, no guards standing too close, just people going about their lives. Saris paused at the edge of the ramp. I was told I was dangerous, she said quietly. Elias shook his head. You were afraid, she smiled. Yes, she hesitated, then added, I was also told humans were reckless. Elias grinned. That part might be true. Saris stepped closer, not touching, but near enough that the space between them felt intentional, not enforced. You changed the galaxy, she said. Elias shrugged. We listened. That is harder, Saris replied. She lifted her hand, stopping just short of his. This, she said, is what my people will remember. Elias placed his hand over his heart. Safe travels, he said. Saris nodded. We will meet again. The shuttle doors closed. As it lifted away, Elias felt a familiar ache. Not loss. Connection. Months later, Elias read a report from a distant system. A species once at war had requested human mediators, not for treaties, for understanding. He smiled and closed the file. Somewhere among the stars, Nocturne children were growing up without being told they were monsters. Somewhere else, humans were learning that strength did not always mean standing firm. Sometimes it meant opening a door. The galaxy had survived weapons. It had survived empires. What it struggled with, what truly unsettled it, was the simple idea that care could cross any distance. That fear was not necessary. That love, responsibly shared, was not weakness. It was choice. And that, Elias realized as he looked out at the stars, was the most dangerous thing of all.